AMC here. I think today we are going to show some love to this old 6.5 Carcano. This is one I remember as a kid, father and uncles shooting at the grandparents' horse farm. So we'll get this thing off the wall, show it a little bit of love. It's had a little neglect over the decades, sitting in storage. So we'll see if we can clean this thing up. But for the age, it's actually held up surprisingly well. We have a TR Tom Richard 5094, or nope, 92, stamped in the wood and also on the barrel of this thing. Not much for sights, minimalistic. Blade on the front, just a notch on the rear. Bolt action. About as basic as it gets. Now, before we get into handling the rifle, let's do a little comparison of the ammunition. So on the left, that would be this one over here. We have a 6.5 Grendel. Next to that, we have the 6.5 Creedmoor. This one is a 6.5 Carcano, one of the newer rounds, 6.5 by 52 Carcano, and then a 7.62 by 5.1, basically a 308 next to it for comparison. And then we have the original ammunition with the firearm. This stuff's in an in-block clip for loading. These are steel jacketed or nickel coated steel core bullets. They would come in a box like this when you would buy them. I believe that has a 1962 date code on it. And then the ammunition was typically head stamped as well. Let's see if we can get this to focus in on the head stamp with the year of manufacture. Let's do it this way, get my hand out of the picture. So looks like this was maybe 1941, 941. Another 41. That looks like a 40. And we'll see what this stuff is. Another 40. So definitely some old ammunition. And of course this stuff, as old as it is, we've got a little corrosion on the brass cartridge from years of sitting in the cardboard box. Here's another box. $1943. And I believe These you could purchase back in the day at your local Kmart, if anybody's old enough to remember those, for a full $1.17 a box. And your box came with 3 end block stripper clips and 6 cartridges to match. About 18 rounds for $1.17. And again, these are copper jacket, but as you can see, they do hang off a magnet. Unlike the new rounds, which do not. So for historical significance, we're definitely not going to shoot these. One, I mean, that powder is from the 40s or 30s, or who knows how much older. The main value here are these end blocks, because without these, we're not really going to get that to work as it should. So we'll set the ammo aside, we'll grab the rifle off the wall, and then get into the breakdown of that. Now, this particular rifle is a carbine version. It does have a shorter barrel. There is no bayonet lug or adapters on this particular one. Again, it's got just a notch just forward of the receiver of the chamber for your rear sight, with a blade for the front sight. Bolt action. This firearm is clear. Magazine well's empty. Chamber is clear. All the ammunition's off the table. Hard telling if this is the original sling. I'm going to assume it probably is. Canvas style. And hey, actually that's not going to come out of there without taking those screws out. So that's probably, let's see if we can get this unlaced. This most likely hasn't been off the firearm in 50 years or more. Yep, that's not going to come off. So we'll have to get those screws out, remove that sling. Alright, the rear swivel is a real simplistic design. Just 2 pockets for your wood screws to slide down into. Attaches to the rear of the stock. And then a swivel, which is just a piece of band metal wrapped around a pin that would rotate. So sling has a snap-in style here, and then your adjustment. And clearly this one has been set up against that front swivel. This one does rotate, but we've got some oxidation, so we'll have to clear that up as well. The wood is otherwise in pretty good condition. These did put a small trap door in the rear for cleaning kits or other items. We'll get a flashlight and see if there's anything. Difficult to say. A little bit of debris or paper. It looks like wadded way up in the stock. So we'll break this down, see what's in there, take the butt plate off, clean that up. But our numbers do match on the stock. The T8 or TR Tom Richard 5092 jives up with the TR 5092 on the front of the barrel. Caliber 6.5. It's got a cool little spring-loaded lever here that your stripper clips or end blocks slide down, and when your last round has been fired, these things would drop out. Possibly. Oh, I got to get it past a little stopper down here. There is a magazine release of some nature back here. We'll have to free that thing up too. It doesn't seem to be very springy. But otherwise, yeah, just a simple spring mechanism to feed your cartridges up into the action. So a visible indicator as to your cocked position of your bolt. Trigger pull on this. Let's grab a scale and find out. We'll zero this. Two-stage trigger. And it looks like a little under 4 pounds, 3 3/4. Pretty crisp. And about the right weight. Yeah, wood is otherwise in pretty decent condition. Yeah, weird spot down here in the wood. Yeah, almost as if something was repaired on it maybe at one point or inset in. But for the 1890s, the rifle is holding up pretty decent. We'll get it cleaned up. We'll get the bore scrubbed. Get the surface rust dealt with. We'll get oil on all of the steel components. Do an inspection on the internals, on the springs, safeties, feed mechanisms, oil up the things that need oil, and remove the things that don't need dust and dirt on them. And break this thing down and continue with the video. And here, with the firearm broken down into its basic components, the stock, pretty basic. Large relief cut on the bottom for your bottom metal. It's going to be your trigger guard. And how these things would load then is this is your end block release or your magazine release. These would load into your bottom metal through the top of the barrel. So they would feed down and in. Sort of a blind well in there with a hole cut out the bottom. So as you would load these into the firearm, they would compress this main leaf spring, and then that finger would hook over that notch on the end block, holding the rounds on a little bit of an uphill angle to be able to feed the cartridge into the chamber. Again, we got some oxidation, mostly surface, to deal with. Very simple design. The release back here with a little bit of manipulation was able to get that to release. It's just a spring-loaded finger. So if you needed to unload an end block, or the way this works is this finger will slide in between, lifting the cartridges out, And then upon the last cartridge leaving, this then could fall out the bottom, allowing a new one to be loaded in, fired, and then the clip dropping free after the last round was fired. And again, this is kind of the critical component to keeping your old 6.5 Carcanos in operation. The alternative would be to single load these. So one cartridge at a time. Doesn't really have a slight feed ramp beveled into the bottom metal, but otherwise fully intended to work off from these clips. Steel underneath didn't look too bad. Definitely some gunsmithing marks here where they indexed in the rear sights to the barrel. I'm sure there's some dates and some things that could be looked up on this to get a little bit more history. Trigger mechanism is really simplistic. It's just a couple of levers. Also functions as your bolt release back here in this groove, as your bolt would ride in the action. To remove it from the action, this little piece stopper would drop down, allowing your bolt to pull free. Otherwise, yeah, steel seems to be in pretty decent shape. A lot of goo in there from decades worth of abuse. But we'll get all that stuff cleaned up. Some more stampings in the back of the action here. Can't quite read those, so I'll have to get the camera in on zoom or get a magnifying lopper and lens and see what's going on with that. But all in all, basic components of your 6.5 Carcanos. Firing pin spring is going to be in this assembly. Again, this will rotate around, cock, and then the spring will drive your firing pin forward, hitting the primer on your cartridge. So for 100-plus-year-old technology, it still seems to work. A lot of tension still on that spring. So, thumbs up to the craftsmen of long gone ages. And then, oh, what else? Yeah, small little barrel cover. And then this one is just pretty basic. A little piece of metal. Looks like I'm not sure what that is. Did we lose some wood? Looks like we might have. There might have been an index notch here. Yeah, it looks like this had a small little dovetail. There's some wood residue left in there. And that looks like that dovetail indexed in here with this missing piece of wood. Yeah, there is a inset here where this is got another piece of wood. Doesn't quite match the original grain. That might have been maybe for a bayonet, for an underlug. So they did have some models with the bayonet that would fold out under the barrel. And this might have been a filler piece and a conversion to cover up that Cover up that missing section of the stock. Yeah, this other inset here too could have been something similar. Difficult to say. Get the butt plate off. See what the inside of that steel looks like. Well, the rear base metal didn't look that bad either. Just a simple spring clip design to hold this trap door open. A little oxidation, but for over a century, it's not too bad. And the wood, no signs of dry rotting. That seems to be holding up pretty good too. So we'll just do a light polish with some oil on this and try to preserve it as best as possible. Not change any of the patina or the finish. I'm not going to try to gouge or sand out any of the gouges. Just put a light coat of oil on the surfaces. And then with the barrel too, we'll clean up that surface oxidation. Treat that. Brush up this bore, as this bore definitely needs some attention. Where is the camera? Can I get this thing in here? And there we can kind of see down it. But that needs some attention. That's kind of grubby. Cool. Well, hey, thanks for following along. Been kind of a long video. We'll get this thing out to the range after I get it all put together, and we'll do some comparisons. I really want to see how the 6.5 Carcano stacks up with the 6.5 Grendel. We've got the Grendel in bolt action, and still have Uncle's 6.5 Grendel semi-auto here. So we can do a bolt, do a semi-auto, and do a centuries-old bolt. Again, probably won't be shooting these monster cartridges just for, yeah, safety for one, because who knows if they're going to make it all the way through the barrel. And these are just neat conversation pieces too, because hey, from 1940, they're not making these anymore. Especially the ones that'll stick to magnets. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you got an old Carcano kicking around. Remember one from your youth. I do like these stocks. Just a minimalistic, basic, get the job done. As heavy as it needs to be, but light enough to carry around. That's probably why they've survived. Plus then there's also the JFK history with this cartridge. So look that up if you have some spare time or if you weren't taught that in history. Stay safe. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching.